Before we begin, it is my pleasure to give a shout out to Creator Generation, a new YouTube channel focusing on how to make successful online content. These guys have such a great understanding of the internal mechanics of YouTube and how to make successful videos. They work with some of the best creators in the world, and if I might just say so, that includes yours truly. They have a podcast and YouTube channel where I have this awesome interview with these guys, and you actually get to hear some of the behind the scenes that has happened with me as a YouTube creator, the history that I've had to go through, some of the challenges and some of my own kind of perspectives and goals. I've done several workshops with them as well, events in Melbourne with hundreds of people trying to understand how to make a successful YouTube channel, and they brought me along as a featured guest and speaker. So please do go check them out. I'll put a link to our interview in the description below, and also subscribe so you don't miss any of their future awesome videos.
Shadowversity.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and if you don't know much about me, let me just say I really like swords, medieval stuff, and fantasy, okay? And as a result of that, I have a bit of a soft spot in my heart for the Witcher series. I'm far more familiar with the video games than the books, but if there is one series I can point to that really exemplifies the medieval aesthetic and combines it in a really cool way with fantasy, it is The Witcher. And I mean, the video games, they have been so true to medieval accuracy with the buildings and the armor. It looks phenomenal. So, as you might have been able to predict, the pictures, these sneak preview pictures that have just been dropped to show off, supposedly, the upcoming Netflix Witcher series, well, I have thoughts. All right, I'm going to address the biggest thing that stood out to me out of all these pictures, as well as the other things, okay, that also stood out to me. But the biggest one, okay, this picture right here. I'm just... studded leather. I mean, come on, look, I know there's studded leather in the video games, okay? But at least even the studded leather in the video games look mildly passable, because this is the thing about medieval fantasy, okay? Both of those things, all right, are supposed to exist in one. And the medieval part is important, but because it's fantasy, you are absolutely free to take certain liberties, all right? And so when it comes to fantasy, the kind of larger priority people who really love this genre have, myself included, especially those who love medieval stuff and everything, isn't actually medieval accuracy, it's functionality, believability, okay? We want to be immersed, and when we see things that are just stupid and don't make sense, you're like, what? But having said that, when it comes to something that is so rich in medieval culture and stuff like that, seeing crap like studded leather is like a slap to the face, and a slap to just the prestige and respect this series has shown to medieval history and culture and stuff like that. And granted, the studs on this armor, they're very small, and so if I'm trying to be generous, I'd say they're there for aesthetic value, not for the idea, the incorrect idea that these studs somehow increase the defensive value of this armor, because it doesn't. Just to let you know. Like, I mean, the chances that a blade strike or an arrow or something is going to hit one of these studs is really small, and if it does hit, it's going to slide to the edge and then hit the armor like normal. So, if we were to say that these studs are actually aesthetic, well, honestly, the armor improves in its, depiction, its look quite a lot, okay? Because when you just consider leather armor, the way that actual historical leather armor would have looked like, well, mostly these would be really stiff leather plates. It's not dress leather. This is the big, inaccuracy that you see in so many historical movies and fantasy movies, that they're wearing supposed leather armor, and it's this thin, like almost wafer thin leather crap. It's dress leather. It's not armor leather, okay? And look, there were absolutely leather jerkins that existed historically that you can try and draw an equivalence to, but these leather jerkins weren't armor. They were dress leather because these were items of clothing, not items of armor, okay? And then people kind of equate the leather jerkins to be armor. And also, by the way, leather jerkins, from all the references I've been able to find, they date to the 16th century, slightly after the medieval period. In a fantasy setting, it's perfectly fine. You can kind of grab things that have a similar-ish aesthetic into the setting that you want. I mean, we see rapiers in medieval fantasy settings all the time, and that is not a medieval weapon. And so having the jerkin in a medieval setting, which is what, Geralt is wearing in the earlier games, is like just leather jerkin. But now going back to the armor that Geralt is wearing from the Netflix adaptation, and if we take away the studs, well, this leather armor looks to be fairly stiff and thick. Exactly the type of look that you would want for leather armor. See how his kind of like pauldron plate, leather plate pauldron things have a very stiff curve to them, okay? That implies a hardening of some type. And then he's got leather vambraces, which did exist in the medieval period, so accurate as well. The other thing that I have to give credit to in regards to this armor design is that the waistline is raised a bit higher than what you would see on, say, a leather jerkin or something like that. This is made to be what looks to be a more functional cuirass. You can see his waist and hip line really easily in this picture, and then the line of the breastplate is a bit higher to give him the maneuverability he needs because he's jumping and flipping around as a witcher, and that is the very type of design we see on historical breastplates. Of course, on historical breastplates, these curves are usually far more pronounced, but this isn't a metal breastplate, it's a leather cuirass, essentially. Just those studs, like, all right, look, I'm gonna be generous. They're there for just aesthetics. His face is really dirty. I hope this is like after a fight or has been traveling for a long time and they're not defaulting to the whole thing where everyone in the medieval setting of some type, is fantasy or not, have mud all over their faces because no one took baths. So there we go. There's actually more to like about the armor than hate. I just have a very, very strong reaction to when I see studs on armor. I'm like, all right, now let's look at the swords. The sword is holding in this picture and also the back scabbard. There are things to be said about this. And of course, the larger controversy that people bringing up, the fact that he's only wearing one sword. And look, if you're going off the books, he doesn't actually wear two swords. He takes two swords with him, but more often he keeps his second sword on his horse. Now, I'm not an expert on the books. I've done the appropriate amount of internet research, looking onto the forums and the people actually read the books and stuff, and that's what I've been able to find. If there's any actual more obscure part in the books where he is wearing the two, okay, I'm wrong, I admit it, but from what I've been able to find, no, he only wears one in the books. Having two swords on his back is more predominantly the video game thing, and I'm wondering if they're actually limited in making the TV series look like a video game for copyright reasons, because CD Projekt Red might actually have the kind of visual design copyright on this version of Geralt. Alright, so that's the two sword controversy addressed. Now let's look at this sword specifically, and I'm assuming this is his steel sword, and look, it's not as good as the video game versions, okay? And do you see the sword that is hanging here? What happened to my other sword? Well, this is actually a foam, reproduction of the, Witcher's steel sword from the video games, and just look at its proportions and design. This thing is beautiful. The sword designs and just the armor designs of the Witcher video games are phenomenal. And even if they couldn't make the versions of these swords in the TV series the same as the ones in the video game, they could have at least, been as good in terms of the design, the proportions, give him a really authentic looking long sword. The crossguard, it's got sharper angles on it. It gives it a bit more of a fantasy feel. It also looks to be more of a bastard sword. That handle is shorter. We can see a good pummel there, but by the look of it, this isn't a proper longsword. It's just a little bit shorter into the bastard sword category, which is a subclassification of longsword. It's still longsword, just not a full-length longsword is what I'm saying. Not by the look of it in this picture. Could be wrong from different angles. In actual fact, let's double check on that other picture. Sword in the scabbard. Yeah, okay, I kind of withdraw what I was saying, but that is more long sword. I guess it was the angle that was making it look like it had a shorter handle. So overall, my thoughts on the sword, it's passable, it's not great, it's not phenomenal. The video games are so much better, but look, it's not a fantasy piece of trash, okay? This is a sword that, you could see in a historical period. The crossguard, I'm still a little iffy on. It's not outside the realm of possibility. Okay, the back scabbard. And as the honorary holder of the person on YouTube that has the largest back scabbard topic related video on all of YouTube, I feel uniquely qualified to talk about this subject that I have no formal qualifications in. First of all, very glad that they have a back scabbard in which he would be able to draw the sword from his back. That's the big issue about the whole back scabbard controversy, is that having a regular scabbard, you wouldn't be able to draw it. I mean, I addressed this in my video, but it's not the best design, okay? I know of a really good back scabbard design that enables you to draw the sword and put it away and fully covers the sword to protect it from most of the weather, but also to protect you from, touching the edge of the blade. This obviously doesn't touch the edge of the blade, but a lot of the sword is exposed here on the Witcher scabbard, and there is a better design that someone somewhere that made and showed. Wonder who that was. But with practice, I think he would be able to put the sword back with one hand and not kind of get tangled up. It'll take practice, but once he gets the muscle memory of where the angle needs to go and he'll be able to put it in, I think that the scabbard could work, but there are some weird kind of loops on this scabbard circling around the blade. Can you see this? One is clearly a leather strap, but the other part, that almost looks like a ridge on the sword blade itself. Like I don't know what's happening there, and because I don't know, I can't really say definitively like it's crap, right? But if it's a ridge on the actual blade, like what? Hopefully there'll be an explanation for that. But the leather strap, okay, this could be a weakness in this sword design. And if this sword won't stay securely in its sheath scabbard without having this leather strap being hooked on as a flawed design, as a bad design, as a better design that they could have used. Am I bitter about it? Maybe, but I proved it worked. I tweeted this to someone on the which, anyway, look, obviously I didn't have realistic expectations that I would use my design. It would have been awesome, but my design works. It's really cool. And so I'm looking at this leather strap and I'm wondering, like, does that mean he's got to get the sword through that leather strap when he's putting it back? Because if he does, that's kind of the same problem and issue with drawing a sword from the back normally. I mean, maybe he can draw the sword up out of this bottom part, and then once it's out of the bottom part, he can kind of loop it over his shoulder. It would still be hooked in this leather loop, but he can kind of pull it down, but he would still run into the same problem. So the only thing I can assume about that leather strap is that it just slips off. Maybe it's like in a loop of some type and it just slips out and pulls free. There is kind of like a round something behind the crossguard, and I was assuming this was something in the background on the previous picture. So we'll zoom in on his hand, see this kind of round. I was assuming that was part of the background, but now looking at this other picture, there's this round disc something behind the crossguard. I'm wondering what this is. I can't, like, it's not a shell guard, it's not like a side coolant. It's like, is it some aesthetic kind of disc with a symbol on it? Ooh, the handle is looking very round. This is super nitpicky, but with someone who studies historical sword and stuff like that, this is important, especially with like not only historical sword design, but functional good sword design. Having a handle that is oval, not a perfect circle, so you can index the blade is important. And this one is looking circular to me. I hope I'm wrong. I can't really say definitively, but there's precedent to be concerned here. There's another thing I'm noticing about the armor. There is distinct kind of indents on the armor that might imply there are metal plates in between. Now, I actually don't think that's the case. I think these are just aesthetic kind of indents that you can put into leather normally. Leather can be quite malleable, and when you wet it and you press it down, it'll stay pressed down, and you can make these beautiful designs and patterns in leather as a result of this. And that's what I'm honestly thinking, but it'll be nice if there were actual metal plates underneath to make this armor that much better. This is Siri. She's wearing a hood. Yep, moving on. And this is Yennefer, and she's wearing a dress. Now, is it an authentic medieval dress? Doesn't really look like it. I mean, those fur elements, but this is fantasy, okay? And in fantasy, you can bring in fashion elements from outside the medieval period. That's fine, but it doesn't really seem like it'll fit into an authentic medieval looking setting, like proper medieval design in their fashion stuff. But we don't even know if they will have an authentic medieval design in the Witcher series overall, because we've seen the Nilfheim armor.
What did you say?
Sorry, don't flame me in the comments, Nilfgaardian armor, alright? I corrected myself. No need to mention in the comments below. Also known as the scrotum armor. Oh, this is horrible. Like, ugh. I mean, compare the two. Witcher video game versus Witcher TV series. Like, the TV series, that makes you want to gag. What the hell is this crap? It is so bad, I would have assumed that they were trolling us. And at this point, I'm hoping they're trolling us, because it's just horrible. Like, what is it supposed to be made out of? Oh, gosh. It makes me repeat one of the greatest lines ever spoken. My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't.
And that's all I can say about this utter piece of crap. Like, it is so bad, words can't describe how bad it is. It just does not bode well. Now, having said all this, does that mean the Witcher video games is perfect? Not really. I mean, the Witcher outfit from the first two games are perfectly fine with his leather jerkin, but in the third Witcher, video game, he's classic. I know you can wear whatever armor you want in the game, but his default armor from the cinematics and stuff, Look, there's still issues with it. It's a lot better than what we see than studded leather, for instance. But there are issues with it, and now this is where I'll probably get really flamed by people who love The Witcher. I love The Witcher too, but if you understand medieval weapons and armor, segmenting mail into separate plates is nonsensical. Mail is one of the most flexible armor types in the world. You don't need to separate it to get more versatility and flexibility out of it, which is one of the reasons why you segment armor in the first place. You do it with plate metal armor because the plates are stiff and unmoving, and so for you to get the articulation you need, it needs to be separated. Mail, you don't need to do that, but on this design we see the mail separated onto separate plates. Obviously it's for aesthetic reasons, but it creates a weakness because as soon as you segment this armor, you open up gaps where very pointy things can slip in between and hit your inside. You don't want that to happen. And so instead of having mail plates which seems to be on top of some type of stiff leather there and there, he could be just wearing a mail hauberk which is covering his whole upper body, no gaps, no weaknesses there. And then of course he's wearing gambeson already, that's awesome, good stuff. But as much as I am loath to admit it, it's not perfect. Still, Witcher games do such a good job. I mean, just the Nilfgaardian armor comparison is enough to say that, hands down. And of course, the mail that Geralt is wearing is just orders of magnitude better than studded bloody leather. But there we go. These would be my overly nitpicky thoughts on the recently revealed pictures for the upcoming Netflix TV series. And I'm concerned. Still, hope you have enjoyed, and of course, I hope to see you in the next video. So until that time, farewell.